We have a relatively small UFC Fight Night card, but there are a lot of great fights on it. This UFC Fight Night is taking place in Shanghai, China, with Johnny Walker and Zhang Mingyang as the headliners. The fight we will cover today is between Michel Pereira and Kyle Daukaus. I see this fight as pretty one-sided, honestly. At 185, we've seen Michel Pereira go on a little bit of a losing streak recently, but he's still only 31 years old, and he's still bringing up a little bit of lighter man skill. I think 4 fights or 5 fights at middleweight now. Previously, he was at welterweight, and he's taking on a guy who is making his UFC return in Kyle Daukaus. I don't know much about him, but his record is 15-4, and he's on a 4-fight win streak. Now, I'm looking at it, he was cut from the UFC and is now making a return after having a 4-fight win streak. And previously, he lost to Eric Anders in the UFC. He lost to Roman Dolidze, but he beat Jamie Pickett, and he had a no contest against Kevin Holland. He's only 32 years old, but I don't want to see much of a shot for him. The odds makers have it. Michel Pereira's a -290 favorite, so I think my pick for this fight is going to be Michel Pereira to win by first round TKO. He's an explosive fighter, so I think he's gonna get it done by TKO. We have the always underrated Loner Kavanagh coming back, and he's facing Charles Johnson for a spot in the rankings here. Kavanagh is one of the biggest prospects in the UFC right now. He's only 26 years old, a British fighter. I believe he fought in Cage Warriors. He's in the flyweight division. He got a couple of good wins and had a good fight on the Contender Series last year. He faced Felipe dos Santos, who was the guy who had a close fight with Manel Kape. He also had a decent performance against Asu Almabayev. Meanwhile, Charles Johnson is coming off a loss to Ramazan Tamirov of Uzbekistan. But before then, he had a 4-fight win streak, and he's an active fighter. Charles Johnson also knocked out Joshua Van last year in the 3rd round of their fight. But now Charles Johnson is getting a little older for the division. He's almost 35. Loner Kavanagh is younger and just getting better. He's only had 2 UFC fights and 1 on Dana White's Contender Series. He's been relatively active as well. Fought 4 months ago, 8 months ago, and Dana White's Contender Series a year ago. But there's going to be a big height and reach disadvantage here for Loner Kavanagh. Unfortunately, he's only 5'4" with a 67-inch reach, while Charles Johnson is 5'9" and one of the rangier fighters in the division. And this is a tough fight to pick. I think it's closer than the odds suggest because the odds have Kavanagh as a -215 favorite. I think my prediction for this fight is going to be Loner Kavanagh by decision. I have been proven wrong many times when it comes to predicting fights involving Waldo Cortez Acosta, but I do think that he lost his last fight against Sergey Spivak 29-28. But it was a super close fight. Waldo is fighting another guy named Sergey, but this time he is facing Pavlovich, who is one of the biggest punchers in the heavyweight division. Even though Waldo is known for having solid boxing, he sometimes plays around too much with his antics, and he gets caught doing that. He got stunned decent by Sergey Spivak in their last fight, and if that same strike were to be landed by Pavlovich, then he would have been knocked out. Pavlovich also showed a different side of his game in his last fight when he fought against Jairzinho. He was able to wrestle and control Jairzinho decently well. People forget that Pavlovich once trained at AKA with Khabib and them. There's a famous picture out there with him posing and looking in his best shape beside Khabib and another team member. Waldo has shown some offensive wrestling when he smothered Robulis Spain for 3 rounds and won an easy decision. But I think Pavlovich is going to be a big challenge because Pavlovich is one of those guys who never really backs down and always loves to walk forward and land a load of boxing combinations. My official prediction is going to be Pavlovich by 1-round TKO. The people's main event is in the co-main, and it's 5 rounds between Aljamain Sterling and Brian Ortega. This fight is going to have lots of good scrambles because both of these guys are super elite when it comes to jiu-jitsu, and that is where they both excel the most. Aljamain is probably a lot quicker than Brian Ortega, but Ortega has a better chin than Aljo. Both of these guys are coming off losses against the top of the division, so the winner of this is still not really in contention for the featherweight title, but a loss for Aljo could end in retirement, while a loss for Ortega would maybe mean he can finally move up to lightweight. Even though Aljo is like 2 years older than Ortega, he has taken a lot less damage in his career and has not had as many wars compared to Ortega, who took some crazy beatings against Volk and Max. I think that Aljo gave away quite a few positions in his last fight against Movsar, but Ortega does not have the same takedown threat because his wrestling is not very good. So I think if someone would initiate the grappling exchanges, it would be Aljo shooting a double leg, but Ortega could engage from the clinch because he is big and cuts a lot of weight. This is a 5-round fight, and both guys have good cardio, but my official prediction for this fight is going to be Aljamain Sterling by decision. Man, I feel my boy Johnny Walker is going to be put in a highlight reel again because he is super chinny, and they're throwing him to the wolves by making him fight against Zhang Minyang, who has power and has knocked out all 3 of his opponents inside the UFC. Johnny Walker has not won a fight in 2 years, and the last win he had is also the same win Zhang has, which is over Anthony Smith. The only reason Johnny Walker was able to win was because he was attacking his family. We all know how Johnny Walker's fights go. He goes off around at the start of the first round and does some stupid feints before he eventually gets pushed back towards the fence and then knocked out. We saw Volkan Ozdemir get Walker by the cage and drop him before putting another shot to shut his lights out. The same thing happened when he fought Jamal Hill. Walker was by the cage when he was hit on the temple. Somehow, Walker always ends up on the fence, knocked the fuck out. So yeah, Zhang is a -400 favorite for this fight, and I couldn't agree more. I don't see a way to victory for Walker unless he lands a flying knee, so my official prediction is Zhang Minyang by TKO.